Welcome back. And now for part 2. What do you think the Master was like when he was human? What was his backstory that you created for him? What was he up to?
The idea of taking somebody's blood and drinking their blood is a very interesting idea. It's like taking their soul, drinking in their soul, which means drinking in their pain and drinking in their suffering. And I think that ages you and rots you and deteriorates you. And I think that's how he came to look the way he looked. I don't think he always looked that way. I think at some point he maybe looked like Rutger Hauer.
He was a looker to begin with.
I think he might have been. I think part of his reason he's pissed off is because all of that is gone. And now all I have is my lust for blood. And before I had my lust, but I could turn it into charm and I could turn it into romance, didn't turn it into seduction. The Master doesn't have much opportunity to seduce anyone now. He has to do it by his power, by the power of his personality, what he thinks of as his intellect. Good, now I want to do it again, just talking about it.
You brought so many brilliant shades. The Master is terrifying, powerful, grandiose, dramatic. You also brought such a sense of sardonic humor and a flamboyant flair to him. How did you strike that mercurial balance?
As you read the script, you see what's needed on each particular line. And if you break every scene down first into a line by line and understand, not think this is how this word should sound, but think this is what this word means to him. This is why he has to say it. All acting needs to be filled with intention, but especially something like The Master. It's like Shakespeare. Nobody speaks in Shakespeare off the cuff. It's not to be or not to be. That's the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. I mean, you have to have intention in every word. You find that balance, you find that structure to build a character with those layers by breaking every line down to why does he say your eye? What does he see when he says that? And what is it about that eye that makes me just want to put my finger in it? So that's it. And if, as you say, I don't come to it with a list of those qualities I want to give it. What's in this scene? What's in this word? What's in this sentence? What's in this paragraph? What's in this gesture? For me, as an actor and for the character, and where those two come to meet, the frisson of the character and the actor is where the energy is. And then that's transferred also whatever energy you put out, my partner puts out, and I put out. The real magic of the theater, as Shakespeare calls it, is in the airy nothing that happens between the two of us.
Uh-huh.
Not you and it's not me. It's what we do together, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I absolutely do. With Julie, you mentioned what it was like working with her. What was the Master's relationship to Darla?
I think she was like a daughter. I think when he made her, he was old enough that she was like a daughter. But I think, like Donald Trump says about his daughter, he wishes he could date her. There was, for me, into the way I thought of it and worked it, there was a sexual energy.
Incestuous.
I happen to be old enough to come from the school of thought about acting that, like Oscar Wilde said, everything in the world is about sex, except sex. Sex is about power. So I happen to think that all scenes are a love scene in some way. Love denied or love granted or love sought or love needed in some way. At least I think that the interesting characters are the people that are either giving love or aching for love. And the Master is somewhere in there, a combination of a lot of those things.
Was your relationship to the Anointed One also fatherly, paternal?
Fatherly, paternal, but also sexual.
So it was very incestuous.
Exactly. It was incestuous. It was all the icky stuff, because I think the Master, A, being the Master, lives in a place where the icky stuff is fun. The icky stuff to those mere mortals who walk on the surface of the earth that they're afraid of. That's the fun stuff.
And your very name, I mean, the Master.
Right. A friend of mine said when I played the Maestro and then the Master, I can't remember which came first, the Maestro, that should be the name of your autobiography, From the Maestro to the Master.
That's great. How do you think the Master survived so long?
I think he's really smart. and cautious when he needs to be cautious, and bold when he needs to be bold. I think he sees when to sacrifice a pawn and when to use a queen. I think he's just really smart.
Did you see him as cunning?
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's cunning in that way. He's not sneaky cunning unless he has to be, but he'll find an edge, whatever. He'll find a way to survive. And he's not afraid. He's already dead, so he's not afraid to die.
Right.
So there's really nothing for him to fear.
Well, he's been invincible, and it sounds like when you use those chess analogies that he's always thinking so many steps ahead. He's playing the long game.
Yeah, he's always playing the long game. And it's a long game. If it's 800 years,
It
you
is
have
a
to have a lot
long
of patience.
game. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to be pretty smart or active brain-wise, at least, to live that long in a church underground and not get bored and not go bonkers. But maybe he is bonkers.
Maybe he is a little bit, yeah. What was it like working with Sarah?
It was great. I really liked, as I said before, it was like the one scene that was like a lengthy scene where there was actually kind of an arc. And the whole series, the whole season had been sort of about building this relationship.
Leading up to it. Yeah, not together, but it was mounting to that denouement.
There's wonderful anticipation towards that moment. So it was great. She was very available. She was meek in a nice way that made it fun to manipulate her. I mean, I would have liked to have directed her as Juliet. I think she's smart enough to play Juliet in Romeo.
I have a question which is off the beaten path, and then we'll go back to the beaten path, so to speak. You have an idea for a production of Romeo and Juliet that seems really unusual.
Yeah, it's not really my idea either. It's Jerzy Kratowski's idea. He said it once when I was in a workshop with him, and I thought it was a great idea. And it's Romeo and Juliet as a memory play with an 80-year-old Romeo and or 76-year-old Juliet having consummated their love, had their love, and lived.
So it would change the outcome of the play.
It would change the outcome of the play, except as people imagine. The metaphor is that their love, the mad, passionate love, it dies very quickly, but they've lived the rest of their life together. Not saying that there's not love in it, but there's not that kind of romantic, I see her across the room and I fall madly in love with her and I'll do anything.
Or that teenage infatuation kind of.
The teenage infatuation, which is what that is. It's consummated and it goes on, and maybe it grows into be a sterile. I mean, that's one of the things you'd have to discover in rehearsal, is whether it's a sterile thing when it's been 80 years old, if it's dead and crusty and dusty and barren.
Or still beautiful.
It would be an interesting way to do it. And so the old man and the old woman acting out, it's as though they were telling the story to their great-great-grandchildren at your Christmas party or Thanksgiving party or something like that. I'm not sure. There's lots of little things you'd have to work out.
My friend did a Shakespeare with Chris Walken and said he was really interesting, and he did the cardinal sin, which was that Mr. Walken, I don't know him, so although I was once at a party at a dinner with him, but he left his script, and you don't read other actors' scripts and their notes and their personal stuff, but he just couldn't resist, and he had left to go to the loo, and Josh went up and he just was like peering at and he noticed that he erased all of the punctuation, which is part of what he does with the way that he speaks. And it was literally erased in his script.
That's funny. That's great.
Do you have a favorite moment from the show, a favorite scene?
From Buffy?
Mm-hmm.
I think the scene with Sarah at the end where I get to bite her on the neck and say, by the way, nice dress, and just have the whole tug of war basically with her. I think that was the most fun, the most acting. The rest of it all seems to be bits and pieces, not a scene that could stand alone almost as its own story. Everything else was just bits and pieces of a bigger story. That was certainly the most fun. I remember lots of moments of squeezing the sweat out of my nose and having to go to the bathroom and having somebody feed me a grape because I couldn't pick one up.
Rudolph Martin, who played Dracula in one of the episodes, he's a friend, and he told me that between the hair and the contacts and the teeth and the nails and the wardrobe, that he was so uncomfortable. And he kept thinking, if I were really Dracula, I think I would be comfortable. And I'm trying to appear as if I have this strength and power, and I'm just so uncomfortable. Like every element of when I'm gesturing it and my hair is getting caught in my nails and this is happening and and I'm having to overcome that, which of course you don't see any of that when you look at his performance, which seems seamless.
But it's there somehow. I mean, the way the master speaks is because I had to speak through those teeth. So I had to, as I said earlier, I had to enunciate very clearly. And that led me on to another thing. The jacket I wear, you don't slouch around in a jacket like that. It gives you posture. And that gives me a sense of aristocracy, a sense of having owned everything at one point.
Yes, he's regal.
Yeah, it all, even the uncomfortableness. I was lucky that knocking on wood, that the contacts didn't hurt or irritate my eyes. They were very good about lubricating them all the time. I'd never worn contacts, so it was new, but I took to them. My eyes accepted them very well.
What was it like coming back for the flashback sequences when you went to Angel for the episode of Darla and then coming back to Buffy in season 3 and then in season 7?
I did the first season in 97, I think. And then I moved and quit the business, retired in 99 or 2000. So I had already quit and was retired as far as I was concerned, and living in Wisconsin, and bought a restaurant.
Was it The Godfather? Just when you think you're out, they pull you back in?
You're very good. Exactly. Yeah, it was like that. Only I was happy to go do it. It was a different relationship to the character, and the production had changed. The way people worked had changed. The scripts had changed, like the one. It's quite a fun script. I can't remember who it is, makes a wish that Buffy had never come to Sunnydale. That's the one in season 3. The master's the mayor of Sunnydale and has his little blood factory. There's an element of humor in that's a little further off the mark, I'm going to say. It doesn't carry as much wit as the first season did when they're finding themselves, which had more of Joss's natural wit and more of a really hungry wit. It was surprising, and it was interesting to me how it changed. And working on Angel with David, was a very nice guy and very professional. He's had a really nice career.
Why do you think Buffy has such legs with the audience?
Well, when it happened, it was unique in that it gave a woman the power of life and death. And I guess she'd had it when Angie Dickinson played that cop, but it gave a teenage girl who ordinarily we perceive as a cheerleader type. It gave her the power of life and death. And I think that was the hook that got people. And what has carried it and given it legs so we're here 28 years later, it still draws people to these conventions who know it and live it and love it with a kind of a passion that goes beyond just the celebrity.
Julie Benz and I were just talking about what she calls oh shit moments, the insecurities that arise. What if I don't have the show in me tonight? What if I can't find the character I've just been cast in? All of those kinds of things. Have you had these moments of self-doubt?
Yeah, constantly. My whole persona, my whole life is a reaction to self-doubt and a questioning my self-worth and all of that. But it's a reaction to it. It's how I, over time, have found a way of dealing with it. I mean, in this moment now, I don't know how I'm coming across or how I'm presenting myself.
Brilliantly. Absolutely brilliantly.
Say that again?
Oh, brilliantly.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you really didn't hear. I thought you just wanted me to repeat it.
We need that. I mean, it's great to be told that it's working. I mean, I don't mind appearing brilliant. I don't mind appearing a little bit charming. I want to appear funny, and I want to appear as though I'm a whole human being, even though I'm not yet. I mean, it's a continuing process of growing and learning and becoming, I think, until they turn the lights out, till it's done. And then you've got what you got. You are what you've got, what you've done, what you've been, what you are. But it's nice to hear that because I don't know. I'm just out here in the ether talking. I ran a restaurant for a long time, and the best servers were totally casual, totally relaxed, totally friendly to everybody that came in. When I saw them do it, it was a job. It was professional. I'm always afraid that the person I'm talking to who's laughing and enjoying themselves is just being professional. And I'm doing a job too, obviously. But my job as an actor is to bring myself as much as I possibly can, as much as I know how to, into that job. So I'm glad you thought I was doing brilliantly. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know that creative people, but also all people, have those insecurities, have those thoughts, have those doubts. Even a person that looks like they've got the world on this string. And I think it's important to talk about all of this stuff. And a lot of us actors, I think, come from certain kinds of backgrounds or very different backgrounds, but there could be a thread of, you discussed, your father not necessarily being that encouraging about your career path, and his big compliment, it doesn't sound like he was able to tell you some of the things that you might have longed to hear. And so I think that there's something in all of us performers that we have all of that in us, and it propels us to do what we do.
Right. Part of the job of learning how to be an actor is learning how to tap into that. I mean, that's what the studio and the method and Stella and all those people are trying to teach you how to do. And Uda, too, is how to find that experience that you've had, that history that's part of you that relates to this situation in the play or the movie or whatever.
The central metaphor for Buffy is high school as hell. Did you have any high school as hell stories?
It was hell for me, but I don't think I let on. Okay, here's one high school moment. I played soccer. I was on the soccer team. I started the soccer team with a couple of other guys at Westfield High School in New Jersey. The soccer team, when we'd go to practice or go to play a game, would change into our uniforms in the same locker room that the football team played in. And I was 17, and I had not grown any hair anywhere yet under my arms or around my genitals or anything like that. I was late to mature, so I never took a shower because I didn't want anybody to see that I was, not a guy. And so I would put on my jockstrap right over my tighty whities and then put on my uniform and go out and play. And when I'd come in after practice where everybody's taking a shower, I would just strip off the jockstrap, put on my pants, put my jockstrap in the gym bag, put on my pants, put on my shirt, and go out and wait by the car for Bart Phelps to come out because he was taking a shower like everybody else did and drive me home. That he was the guy that had a car. And one day, 3 football players, and I think they must have been all linemen, realized, they must have been a growing realization that I was never taking a shower. And they decided that I should take a shower. So they came to my locker and they grabbed me and they picked me up and they carried me kicking and screaming, trying to pull off my tighty whities, and they were going to take me into the shower. And I fought so hard that they gave up. And one of them, I think his name was Randy Blair. It was one of those guys where I matured late, he matured early, and he was hairy. He was just like a bear. He had to shave down to here below his T-shirt. So people didn't know it because he probably had to shave twice a day. But I fought him off. And they put me down, and I went back to my locker and got on my clothes and got out of there as fast as I could. That was a real...
Yeah. You said that you felt it was hell, but you didn't let on. What was hellish for you about the high school experience?
Adolescence is hard. High school environment's very competitive. The girls all seem to like the football player right up the street from me was like the most popular, beautiful girl in the whole class, Greer Stewart. She's still a good friend of mine now. She dated Dwight Davies, who's also still a good friend of mine, who was the quarterback and the star guard on the basketball team. He was great. Dwight was a phenomenal athlete, is a phenomenal athlete. They dated, but they broke up right before the senior prom. And Dwight said, can you ask Greer to go to the prom? Because I'm not going to ask her because we're not a couple anymore. And so I asked Greer to go, and she went, and it was like, this was so great to go with the most beautiful, most popular, fun girl. And she lived right up the street, so I knew her just as a guy. I mean, as the way people know each other, not the way boys and girls start to know it. Boys and girls know each other in different ways in high school than people know each other because we're told to or indoctrinated to or somehow. And I'm sure there's a lot of hormonal stuff going on so that we do. But we start to relate to each other differently. There's a sexual component, obviously, in high school. But by the time the prom came, she and Dwight were back together. Dwight went with another friend of mine, and she spent most of the evening with Dwight.
No.
Yeah. It was okay because Dwight was a really good guy and a good friend.
Right. But still.
I was the Xander and who's always kind of the goofy outsider.
You use the word outsider. Have you felt like an outsider, not only in high school, at other points in your life?
Yes, most of the time. I think some of it is self-consciously because it's a trope in the American culture. It's a job in the American culture. It's part of the American culture that the rugged individualist who goes out into the plains and into the mountains to hunt bear by himself, or the loner, the guy who comes to town and doesn't know anybody, but he saves the damsel in distress from the motorcycle gang or whatever. Part of my feeling in Outsiders, and part of it is, it seems to me as though most of the people that I know and I meet are looking for something still, are looking for inclusion, to be included rather than excluded. Even if it's as primitive and as Freudian as to be held again by a mother or a father, just looking to be accepted, acknowledged, validated. Part of that looking and that seeking is feeling on the outside. And that probably has something to do with the fact that we're hairless, walk on two legs way sooner than we should have walked on two legs. We're really vulnerable to nature, to the world. We're easily broken by a storm or a fall off a mountain or a heavy wind. I mean, we're vulnerable creatures in our physicality, and therefore we're also vulnerable emotionally and psychologically. A lot of the actions are of men dominating women, men reducing the other to another, LGBTQ people to another. A lot of that is that insecurity and trying to establish yourself as in control, as dominant.
In looking at you, I think it's one of the things that you bring to your roles is you have an authority and you have a strong voice and you have a vulnerability and you have all of this emotion. I think that's what makes actors really great is the contradictions.
Yes, I think you're right. And I think that is a plus that I haven't always understood and used. In that film, short film character that we talked about earlier, most of the dialogue is how I'm white, I'm male, I'm tall, I'm not that unattractive, and I have a good, deep voice, a voice that reminds you of your gym teacher in high school or your math teacher. Somebody came up to me and said, I know you. Were you my second grade teacher? They thought they knew me from something they'd seen me
Right.
in a
But
television or
they
on film, but they couldn't, it was so familiar that I must have been their second grade teacher.
Who was the best teacher that you ever had, and who was the worst teacher that you ever had?
A man named James Francis Xavier Coakley was my teacher mentor in college. He wasn't there when I first did plays as a sophomore, but he came as a junior when I was really beginning to just do nothing but plays. And he literally fell in love with me, and I didn't know what to do with that part of it, but I understood what to do with the real gift that he wanted to give me, which was he made me sit and listen to opera. He made me sit and listen to classical music, and he would talk about it because he was madly passionate about it. He made me read all kinds of plays and made me tell him about them. And I say he asked me to, and because he was compelling and because he felt this strong way about me and about my potential, I did whatever he asked in terms of listening and learning. Somewhere in the time of our relationship, I realized what a gift he was giving me because I'd come from a family of engineers, librarians, not cold, but just a little bit dry. And I discovered the theater and the kind of passion and hysteria that's inherent in the theater, where you can be making out on the couch in the green room one minute, and the next minute you can be throwing candy bars across the room trying to kill somebody. The same person. It's up and down. It's all over the place. I was so attracted to this. It was like, oh, brave new world, what creatures are there here? Like Miranda says at the end of The Tempest. But that's also true because I come from that cold intellectual background. That's another part of why I always feel a little bit outside, a little bit cut off. I don't know that I'm a natural born actor or a natural born entertainer or a natural born performer. I always have felt as though I was, well, like I said, I work as an actor. I always used to feel like I was the Pete Rose of actors, who Pete Rose doesn't have natural skills. He just really, through will, hit the ball more often in baseball than anybody's ever hit it. I can't even remember the question. I got all wound up.
No, it was amazing. And who was the worst teacher that you ever had?
Oh, and the worst teacher. That's a good question. The relationship between teachers and people is similar to the relationship between directors and actors.
Okay, so who's the worst director you've ever had?
That was my segue, because I can't think of a bad teacher.
I
but
think you
the
do
worst-
have a bad director story.
I've had a couple of bad director stories. There was a guy named Sparky Green who directed me in a movie that I think is called Oasis, about a group of people whose plane crashes, and I played the co-pilot. The pilot's killed in the crash, and we have to find our way out of the desert. And we shot it in Death Valley. It's hot in Death Valley. It's dirty. It's sandy. It was a lot of young actors who hadn't really done very much before. Richard Cox,
I know Richard Cox. I know him from the Actor Studio.
he was in it. But Sparky, he would shoot scenes endlessly, endlessly, and not cut them. He didn't really care about the actor. And at one point, he was telling an actor who was supposed to be dying, "Your butter, your butter." This was his direction.
Oh
Your
my
butter
gosh.
melt like your butter. He was probably the worst director.
The name Sparky. He sounds like he'd be fun. It's not
I
fun.
know. He should have been an electrician, right? He directed commercials or something.
Oh, okay. So tell me about your book, Tim Timmy.
It's a book about my youngest brother, Tim, who committed suicide when he was 46 years old. He spent his entire life, probably, not all of it, in terrible agony, but struggling with what I am convinced is a learning disability, because he had a really great, strong mind, but he always had trouble at school. In those days, in the middle of the country, those days being the 50s, 60s, he was born in 52, so he was growing up through that time. They didn't recognize and identify dyslexia, and they didn't really know how to treat it or what to do with it. So he had dyslexia, some learning disability, but it was never identified, and he never got special care. He had a lot of trouble dealing socially with other people, kids his age. He really clung to the family because he didn't feel welcome or comfortable or good with other people. He fought with them. There were some episodes of violence, but none of it was ever taken as though there was any mental illness. I'm also convinced if he was growing up now, he might have been diagnosed with Asperger's on the spectrum or bipolar or something. He would have been diagnosed, and there would have been a pharmaceutical remedy, and there would have been a talk therapy remedy. But he got none of that because we came from the Midwest, not severely Calvinist stock, but Calvinist. Everybody always said with Tim, "Oh, he'll get over it. He'll grow out of it."
It's a phase.
Exactly. And it wasn't a phase, because he struggled with it his whole life. And the book is about that and his whole life, what I know of it from growing up with him, and then from going away and going to college and leaving him. And when he was in junior high school or about to go through high school, and not really knowing much about him, but interviewing a lot of the people that he did know
Oh,
at that time and getting their perspective on him. And these are people, one in particular, who felt like Tim was his best friend from fourth grade on through high school and beyond. That Tim was really a lot of fun, great fun, but there was always a distance in him. There was always a sense of him standing just a bit outside and watching things and feeling not particularly comfortable. It's about that and his struggle. And then he kind of found himself for a while. He found himself in high school for a season, a football season, because he was big, 6'4", very good looking kid. I think he played tight end or defensive end on the football team. Again, I was gone in high school doing plays and I didn't see him. But I know from talking to people that he was on the starting lineup. He had lettered. There were winning teams. So he had this group of men around him and the women that flock around those groups of men when they're winning, and they're football players and they're winning and they're good. So he had that. And then he built a theater with some people that he met on Martha's Vineyard, where he went to live on Martha's Vineyard. He lived there off and on for about 13 years. And he built a group of friends there that did theater. And then he came to New York with them, and they took a building on 4th Street, West 4th Street and East 4th Street, and literally renovated the building and put a theater inside of it. And they did plays and he directed. So for a while, he was really singing because he was doing plays. He learned Shakespeare. He fell in love with Shakespeare, learned Shakespeare really well. I think probably there was, to a certain degree, a desire to get closer to me in his love of the theater. He never wanted to be a professional actor. He just wanted to study the literature and do it the good old honest way where you're talking about the literature and you're talking about the performance. But he was slipping off the edge too, and he ended up, you'll have to read the book. I won't tell you the whole story, but he ended up living with my parents and committing suicide down there. So the book is about his whole life through all that. As it intertwines with mine, because I go and I digress and talk about what my experience was when I wasn't with him, when I was in college, when I was hiding out from the draft, when I was beginning to be a professional actor and I wasn't around to back him up the way maybe I could. It's inevitable when somebody commits suicide that we think, what could we have done?
Yes.
And the answer is always nothing. You probably did what you could do, and you did what you did. And there's no blame. There's no fault. It may well have been inevitable for my brother to put a gun to the back of his head and blow his brains out. And then the end part of the book, my son was diagnosed as ADD when he was in second grade. And that really didn't work, and the medication didn't work. And then when he was about in eighth grade, he was evaluated again and determined to have Asperger's syndrome. Then it was called being on the spectrum, on the autism spectrum. And then now it's called neurodiverse or neuroatypical. Much healthier, I think, names that don't
Label.
they don't put it off in the corner the way Asperger's or autism spectrum. People have a tendency to sort of pull back a little bit and think of somebody who's drooling in the corner. And my son is incredibly high functioning. He has 3 degrees, a bachelor's, a master's, and a law degree. He's working in Hawaii now.
That's fantastic.
And he's dyslexic. We found a program called the Orton-Gillingham program, which is a remarkable program that teaches people who can't read and can't write for whatever reasons, dyslexia or other reasons, and teaches them how to teach themselves to read and write. And he did that, and now he's been published. He's written papers, have been published. He's got 3 degrees, all of which he had to write for. His job he has to write for. It's really extraordinary growth that he's done because he's an extraordinary human, has extraordinary will, big, 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 huge brain, and because we saw it and saw the difficulty, and we found pharmaceutical solutions and talk therapy solutions. We found as many solutions as we could, and we spent a lot of time acknowledging, yeah, you're different. It doesn't work the same for you as it works for everybody else. They may tease you, they may mock you, they may whatever to you because of that. There will be those that don't, that recognize that difference is good, difference is positive. They won't other you because you're different, because you run through the schoolyard with your hands up like you're a velociraptor and roar at people who insult you. They won't mock you. Will be those. And the ones that do, they're not really worth it. Let them go. And he's remarkable that way in terms of still where he can go right on through, a bad experience with a human on a date or something like that and bounce right back. He feels it. He bottoms out sometimes, but he comes right back and he's ready for more because he really loves this living thing we get to do and learning. He really loves to learn. He's young yet. He'll get tired of living, but maybe not. Who knows?
Maybe not. If he's like his dad, he's going to remain curious.
Well, that's the word. That's exactly right. When I graduated from college, I sent my degree home to my mother and said, here, this is for you, because I very much felt as though I'd gone to college just to get the degree, just because that way she could say, oh, yeah, my son graduated from University of Michigan. But I also thanked her and my father at the same time for giving me the gift of curiosity, because they were curious people. They were intelligent, intellectual people. They read, they asked questions. They asked questions of us, and they expected us to ask questions of them, and they encouraged curiosity. And curiosity is really, that's the breath, isn't it?
Yeah. What has the process been like for you writing this book?
Hard. I think I've been writing it for 8 years, not all the time. I put it down and walked away from it. I started it out. I was taking a memoir class, and I wrote a piece about my brother Roy, my other brother, who lives with me now, who'd come up to help me recuperate from a hip operation, a replacement. The piece was just about 1,000 words about how saying goodbye to him at the airport when I was okay and I was dropping him off to get on a plane so we could go away. I actually found myself not struggling, but just sort of surprisingly saying, I love you. Because it wasn't common in our family to say that, to do that, to be effusive. But I did, and I meant it. And I understood that I meant it. I knew it because of his time that he'd given me, his patience that he'd given me, and because of something that he was. that I don't think I identified before what he was, as in terms of his generosity of spirit, his ease, his lack of competitiveness, his lack of aggression. And when I read this piece in class, I couldn't stop crying. I was trying to talk, and I hadn't realized that I was going to do that to me. I just was. And it made me realize that there was more in my family that I had given them credit for. In my father and my mother, there was more depth, richness, and I needed to mourn my brother. So the process evolved very much. I think I'd written maybe 3 or 4 or 5 individual pieces, one about my father, one about my mother, one about where I grew up in Webster Groves, thinking of them as separate things.
Separate things, and then it started to link.
After I'd done that and written about Tim and his suicide, I started to realize that there's a way to pull these together. There's a common thread. And if I could string them together in the right way, and the book is very kind of episodic. It isn't totally chronological. It is for a while, and then it goes back, and it goes from person to person, from my father's point of view to my mother's point of view to my point of view. It swims in a big pool with all of these people, and it tags a different one at different times. And then somebody came along at one point and said, "You've got to put more of yourself in this book." Some people are going to buy it because Mark Metcalf wrote it. And I didn't want to write a tell-all. Like Tim Matheson, who's a good friend of mine, has written this book, Damn Glad to Meet You, My 7 Decades in the Hollywood Trenches. He's publicized it. The Wall Street Journal just picked it as a great Christmas gift. This isn't that. It's not sensational. It's not gossip. It's not show business. It's not about celebrities. It's about people, when their pants are down, when they're the most vulnerable. And it's about mental illness. It's about mental health. And it's about my favorite way of talking about it is it's a call to action to listen to our children more, because I firmly believe that we have much more to learn from children than they have to learn from us. Most of what they'll learn from us is how to cover it up, and we can learn from them how to open it up and let it out somehow.
You made me think about the movie that my husband and I made is about mental health, albeit a very different aspect. And we always say that if we had seen a movie like the one we made when we were 18, it could have changed the course and journey of our lives. It sounds like your son, measures were taken and he's thriving and enjoying a really productive life. Is part of the mission of you writing the book and releasing the book and getting it out there to help others who are experiencing what your brother went through and what your family went through?
That's the main reason. That's, again, when you talk about my process, at some point, I also realized that I had to have a purpose, a higher purpose. And that was what I realized I really needed to do. That's why I brought my son into it, because the parallels, the similar, and then title Tim Timmy comes from, he was 5 when Tim killed himself. But we would go at Christmas time to North Carolina, where Tim was living when he was very depressed and already 300 pounds. And he tried to commit suicide a couple of times, and living with my parents. There was one time we went, it must have been at Christmas time in North Carolina, no snow. We all went for a walk, and we went to a playground, and Tim White came with us. And Tim and Julius, my son Julius, played on the slide, and they played on that thing that you sit on and push, and it goes around and around and around. You push with your feet, and it goes around. And Tim laughed and smiled for what my mother, who'd been living with him for 5 or 6 years by that time, said was maybe the first time she'd seen him laugh in all that time. And my son, Julius, always didn't call him Uncle Tim or Uncle or anything. He called him Tim Timmy, which is why the book is called Tim Timmy, because of the parallel between the two. That was the reason to bring him in, and it is that I want people to be aware of what life used to be like, and life has changed for the most part in many ways, because now people are recognized as being on the spectrum, and they're not ostracized. Now some schools have special education classes for people who have trouble reading and writing or have trouble with social interaction. Now there are allowances made. Bullying is one of the big things that they talk about through grade school, middle school, high school, and making people aware of bullying. They have to, because social media is such a great place to bully if you're kind to make yourself feel better by making somebody else feel bad. which is what that's all about, really. It's a cry, a rallying cry to listen to your children, pay attention to them, and understand that this on the spectrum thing, I don't think the spectrum's a line. I think of the spectrum as a circle, and we're all on it somewhere. But we're getting to a point where we don't other people.
Yes.
And I say that, I use it verb. You know what I mean, right?
You do. Yeah.
And I mean, we're learning. We're constantly learning as a society, as a culture.
The mission of your book is so important. And when you talk about that too, in terms of being different, the thing is that so many people are on the spectrum. It really isn't different. It's just now we are knowing more about it. And so that's incredible.
Right. We know more about it. And we also know more about how we need to include, how we're healthier beings, scientifically, biologically, if we mix races, if we mix ideas, and if we tolerate, if we learn. LGBTQ gay people have so much spirit to give, which is why the theater and the film is so filled with them, because it's a place for them to give. Disabled people have something to give. Everybody has something to give, to toss in. Even people who think the world is flat have something to give.
So, Mark, where can people get your book?
On Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. They do print on demand. I think you can do a hardcover or a soft cover. It will be available as an ebook on different ebook platforms, Kindle and all those places. And at some point, I hope there'll be an audiobook, which I will read.
Which you would read.
Yeah, because I really like to read it. Because part of the writing process is finding your voice as a writer. But I try to write it as much the way I speak, without quite so many ums and ahs, but a lot of commas.
What else is a big part of your life these days?
My dog, Mike.
I heard about Mike. Mike's a lab, right?
Mike's a chocolate lab, a 4 years and 3-month-old chocolate lab, English-style chocolate lab, which means he has a big head and a stockier body, and with beautiful green eyes in the middle of it. He's really a pretty dog. Right now, and for the whole past weekend, he's been with his girlfriend because he's intact. I never neutered him. And there's a female that a good friend of mine, Ben, and his wife, Janelle, and Ben loves Mike. Mike goes and plays with Ben on Fridays and Saturdays. But Ben took Mike on last Friday and has kept him because there's a red lab, English, named Ruka. Exactly. I dropped him off Friday morning at Ben's. Nothing happened Friday morning, but Saturday morning I got a text from Ben. Mike, at this moment in time, on this date, has become a man.
So now there's going to be little Mikes.
What? There's going to be some little Mikes, yeah.
So Mike's been having a good time.
Mike's having a great time, and he's not here. I miss him.
I bet you do.
Yeah. I don't know quite what to do with myself when he's not around to go walking.
When's Mike come back?
Tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, well, it has been so incredible getting to spend this time with you, to talk, to hear about your tremendous career, to hear about your life, to hear about your book, to get to hear all of the brilliance that you brought to all of your characters and the behind the scenes and all of the in-depth stuff about The Master that I know all of the Buffy fans are going to go crazy for. It's just been so wonderful.
Good. Thank you. It's been great to talk to you. As I said earlier, I've met you at a couple of conventions, and, there's always lots of people around, and there's a certain professionalism that goes on. It's been really wonderfully charming talking to you and listening to your questions and hearing and feeling your response. And
I love it. I love it so much. Thank you so, so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Mark. I said Mike.
Mark. Who's Mike
anyway? Again.
Mike,
Mike's my dog. I can't get Mike and his what he's up to off of my brain.
That's right. His hot weekend.
His hot weekend. He's had a much sexier weekend than I think all of us have had. Anyway, thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Mwah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
And now we're going to reveal our next contenders for the Battle of the Uber Buffy Fans, the ultimate trivia contest. Drum roll, please.
Hi, I'm Sarah McNeil from London, Ontario, Canada. I have probably seen Buffy through about 150 times-ish.
Hi, Re-Vamped. Nathan from Belfast here. My total watch count is somewhere in the region of 30 to 40 watch-throughs from start to finish. I tend to watch it right through, take a break of a month or two, and then just watch it straight through again. So I generally watch it twice a year anyway, start to finish.
The demand has been overwhelming. All slots are now filled, but we will be announcing 2 contenders each week till everyone is announced.
Let's get ready to Buffy!
You can also join our community on Patreon. Yes, loads of exciting things going on there. Our Patreon peeps to be read in the credits: Dave Hall, Timothy Kendall, Danielle Harbour, Louise Brennan, and Brandon Key. It makes all the difference because we cannot keep making the show without you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week when we do it again. Do it again. Until next time, rewatch, revamp, reinvent, and be remarkable you.